Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's pretty slick.
Yeah, so just the tour. This is a 360 view
Yeah, that's cool.
of everything. And then if, Pat, if you clap your hands.
No, I don't want the sheriff to know I'm here to come get me.
Oh, look at that. Oh, it,
Go to it.
oh.
Wow.
Wow.
All right.
Rick, you look like you're in the naughty chair there. Did you hear me? I said, Rick, on this screen, you look like you're sitting there in the naughty chair, right in the middle.
It's probably appropriate.
Okay.
Stay there, Rick. We'll let you know when you come over.
So I think I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Hopefully people can hear us okay. Davey's there. Hi, Davey. Can you hear me okay? No, because it's like, no, it's hard. So muffled. I feel like I'm muffled.
Unmuted. Sorry.
How about you guys getting any audio that way?
I think that means.
Yeah,
Can you hear us?
I don't think so.
It almost doesn't look like you can see us either.
Yeah, because we're like that. Our screen's so
Yeah,
small
we're-
over
I
there.
don't think you saw your messaging.
Too much technology.
Oh, they're hearing.
No. Can you hear us, Mary?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Good.
I just texted Kim Salvis and said she's on, and I'm just asking if she can hear us. All right, we're gonna get started in 1 minute.
That's what you said a minute ago.
Well, we didn't know if anybody could hear us. Oh, good. So it sounds like everybody can hear. So meeting's been called to order. If you are on on the Zoom webinar, not here at City Hall, you can raise your hand to comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and it's *6 to mute, and then to unmute, it's *9, and then you raise your hand. All right, so we're going to move into public comment period. If anybody has anything that's not on the agenda they'd like to bring up now, is a great time. Mary?
Yes. Oh, thank you, Valerie.
Do you have anything for us?
Mary Rivard from Home Valley. Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. Well, okay, I just have a few comments. I've been thinking about this for a while, and last time we spoke, we talked about affordable housing, and of course, you guys know that things are not improving for affordable housing. So some of the thoughts I had was, we have to decide if we want to be a community people live, work, or a community for vacationers. I need to answer in the city and the county, really, because this is the mutual problem. How many Airbnbs are within city limits? How much tax is the city collecting? How many homes are just weekend houses now for people from the urban areas, or cottages for urbanites? I know some of our homes here are actual homes, but they're considered cottages or weekend houses for some other people. How many houses are we starting to have in Stevenson? Out in the county, there appears to be more and more gated housing, and with very expensive wrought iron gates and everything. So are we becoming a community of people who are not vested in our community, or what? I think for some of the questions we need to have a deep discussion. So we have a plan for Stevenson. When I the plan was to have the people, not for people who just weeks or months and then they leave in the community. They're not here volunteering, they're not here voting, and everything else. And when are you all actually going to address the issue of affordable housing and what it actually means in your work plan? And I don't think this is something that just the city of Stevenson should be involved in. It should also be North Bonneville and the county planners, because this is not just a city problem, it's a county problem. And we are losing workers who can't afford to live here. So how are we going to maintain our infrastructure if we don't actually have workers who can afford to live and work here? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else have any other comments for items not on the agenda? So I'm gonna, is that Mary?
Mary.
Okay. All right, are we good?
Looks like it.
Okay, so now we are going to move into new business, short plat review. And I see Ben wrote a single page note here for us, just recommending that we bypass review and basically allow him to go ahead and work through the application. Do you just want a thumbs up for that, Ben? Any discussion?
Whatever discussion you all want to have, that is it. Anytime you get a short plat proposal, it comes to the planning commission. You have the option to provide your own review of those, or allow staff to do it. If it's a land division that's 4 lots or more, they automatically come to you. I'm sorry, more than 4. If it's 4 or less, then it's this optional review from staff. So I'm okay with the consensus of thumbs up, if you
Okay.
want.
And this was it two lots? I looked at the.
Two
plan.
lots,
Just-
yep.
Okay, so if you are okay with bypassing planning commission review tonight and allowing our administrator to handle it, do a thumbs up. Okay, good. Thank you, Ben.
Okay,
All right, moving right on to old business.
and before we get
Oh,
too
we have something
far,
else?
well, I didn't get the minutes ready for you.
Oh,
with
okay.
the extra meeting.
Okay, that's fine.
and a vacation by me, so.
Okay,
Those, you'll have 3 sets to review at the next meeting.
okay, that's fine. We'll just maybe build in a little bit of time on the front end of the agenda for us to be able to get through those. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay. Moving right on to old business, zoning amendment increasing residential building capacity.
all right, so this is a direct outgrowth of your meeting the last time around, where it was considered that we might just expand the R3 boundaries to all the areas around the schools and all the R2 areas. You heard in the community questionnaires that that wasn't an overly popular idea, and finding some different way was desirable. So you requested to have a new R2 concept in the zone, and that concept would allow for the graduated density as we get farther away from the downtown area. So you've got a draft of that. At that meeting, you also asked for Jeff and I to work together to come up with a where that new R2 might apply, where the R3 might still be expanded. And so both of those are here for you now. I don't have much in the way of analysis of all of those. It's just, we're continuing that conversation that we've started with the zone change and allowing property owners to do more. There's 2 things going on. There's the text amendment, and I'm hoping that you guys can kind of talk about that and settle those issues before you work into the map amendment. Knowing that we can circle back to talk and make sure that they all make sense before you make any recommendations. So the proposed, well, the draft of the new R2 starts on page 27 of the packet, and we can just refer back to that as we talk about things. I summarize those. It provides more flexibility in that it allows townhomes. They would have been allowed as a conditional use before. They would be permitted now. It decreases the minimum lot size required when dividing property. It allows for a greater number of units per acre than the current R2. Remember that R3 allows a certain number. R2 allows a lower number, and then R1 allows a higher number than R2. So this aligns it with the R1 overall density at 1 unit per 3,000 square feet. The difference between the two is that it would allow a 4-plex, and it allows individual lots that are that 3,000 square feet, where the R1 allows only 6,000 square feet lots. It eliminates the maximum lot coverage limitations. That's something you did in the R3 zone. They still would exist in this, or if this passed, they would no longer exist in this zone, but they would be there for the R1 and the SR districts. Again, it allows 4-plexes and 3-plexes where you can only have a duplex right now. And it decreases the front setback from 20 to 15, and it adds those caveats for pedestrian safety based on the decrease. The 2 aspects of it that could be interpreted as being more restrictive is that it does prohibit new use of septic systems, and it prohibits the structures by the driveways if we make that change. There's some other changes in there to the R3 to clean it up, where we require, or we prohibited the structures next to driveways in the front yard. That street side yard would have allowed that same structure to exist. So somebody could get out of that by putting the driveway on the street side yard, and they wouldn't have to be subject to that vision clearance triangle. So those carrots were added to that in the R3 district. I think I'll just explain kind of, again, for this change, we sent it out hard copies of the potential changes to all the property owners in these areas. There were 5 different types of letters that went out. One to a property that was on the fringe, and Jeff and I thought that that one could be excluded from any change, so that would maintain the R1 designation it currently has. There's a second category of properties that are R1 currently, where the documents here would continue to change them to R3. There are currently R1 properties that would change to the new R2 if that were adopted. And then those same 2 categories are repeated for R2. So they would remain R2 just with the new text applying, and then others would change from R1 to R2. I think I got them all.
Do you want an extra packet?
We haven't printed them out. Do you have any?
Yeah, I just had it online, but I can't get it in here.
Here, I got it here. I got another copy, so just take it. Does that better maps on it on your? I know it's been a running joke.
So we sent out the hard copies, and then we notified everybody just today by email about the meeting. So additionally, we met with some of the owners along I met with some of the owners along Frank Johns Road, Lower Frank Johns Road, and talked about some of the changes there. So that's what we've done so far to involve the public in these decisions. We didn't do a new Survey Monkey for this. Largely, they're revolving around those same policy choices as the last one. Should more development be allowed in R2 areas or not? So that's all I've got as an update. The memo doesn't have any decision points for you guys. Largely, it's taking a step backwards as we re-talk about the text amendment. And so in doing that, we're re-engaging the whole conversation about how to move forward. So.
Okay, thank you.
Ben, question
Go ahead.
about, I have an April document that you sent to me, hard copy. It looks like the same thing that's in tonight's packet. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.
There's, for some, it may be different. The one that's in tonight's packet is it only highlights where there's a difference in the R2 zoning, the text of the R2. For people who currently have property in the R1, I also highlighted where that's different from their existing zoning.
Okay.
That confuses me.
So I tried to make it easy for everybody that if you pick up the thing that was mailed to you
Yeah.
and you see yellow, that's where it changes. And so with you, and you received 2 letters, one would have had one yellow and one would have had a different
Trust me,
yellow.
I don't want to look at this
Okay.
anymore. If she can.
I guess the one that's in this recent, the bigger packet that you sent, I don't see our area in yellow, I see brown.
Yeah, it is.
That makes sense?
So I'm talking about the text being
Oh,
yellow.
sorry.
Because she's also colorblind. Anyway.
And then,
I just made that up. That explains why she married you.
I'm having problems with your maps, okay?
okay.
So Ben, I just had a quick question about, I think I saw Rick's letter because I got that with email, but so I've been looking at the rest of them. Were the folks that submitted letters, were they folks that you talked to when you went out and, went up and met with some people on Frankston Road? Are they the same people? And after you talked to them, they submitted written information?
There's 3 total within that group of Frank Johns. Phil Crawford is here.
Okay.
he submitted his letter first
Okay.
before we did the on-site meeting.
Okay,
We did the on-site meeting, and then on behalf of the group, Tracy submitted a letter.
okay,
And so you got her letter and the email that she sent.
right.
With that.
And to be clear, that letter was drafted right in advance of meeting with Ben.
Okay,
So, I mean, there's a lot of, everything's moving very quickly.
Okay.
So, so we have some other comments.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll get to that here in just a second. So, and then my only other question, Ben, before we maybe move into discussion within the planning commission is with the folks that you met on site, because I don't, were there notes? I didn't see notes unless I missed them.
They kept notes. I didn't
Okay.
ask for those.
Okay.
And I didn't.
Okay.
take notes.
So could you just tell me generally what the concerns were? And I mean, obviously I can read their letters, which I
Right.
have, but,
Traffic was a big concern
okay,
with that. There was also, and you guys correct me as soon as I'm wrong. There's also a general concern about why are we doing this?
okay,
And does doing this result in the Stevenson that we want?
okay.
And a sense that we're not asking what the future vision is for Stevenson.
Mhm.
And so we don't know what's wanted.
Okay,
And then there was a lot of discussion. We got too deep in the weeds on the details of things. That's my fault. But there was discussion about that, just exploring the boundaries of what the change is, exploring the logical boundaries of the change.
okay. Thank you.
I would add
Yes, sir.
just the general confusion about the whole thing. It's really complicated. It's been amended, changed, new ideas. We're gasping for air, really. Maps are hard to read. People have not really been paying a lot of attention in some cases. So we're running to catch up, and we'll, I think, give you some more thoughts about that tonight, I hope. That would be, there was also concern about the commercial zone
Mhm.
over there that appears to be still in limbo. And I live across the street, but it is a concern to me, and I think other folks too, what's gonna happen with that. So that would be a couple more details. I don't know, Tracy, did I leave something out?
I mean, I think we landed with a strong message of wanting to partner for deeper and more effective public involvement.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
if the goal was actually to get an education, because we had 9 of us there and none of us really felt like we understood it. So
Okay.
the first step to get Ben to explain it. So getting in the weeds was super welcome.
Okay, good, good. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Could I just add on to that?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
There might be room, are we
So-
gonna be doing public comment?
Let me-
Or-
Yeah, we
Yeah,
will,
hold on.
but I was just asking, yeah, specific
Oh, you
to
can talk.
the,
I was
like,
just-
when you guys met, I'm just curious what the
I was just
consensus and what the concerns were as
Trying
we,
to learn
before we start
beforehand.
talking.
I just
So
wanted to
hold
say-
on a sec. So our minute taker gets.
Oh, yeah,
what's going
sorry,
on, But
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, someone's trying to.
yeah.
We're-
Johanna, can you,
I need to say your names before because the minutes are, she's not gonna know who was just talking.
do you want the authority, Johanna, to
That's
just break
correct.
in?
That's all I needed.
Sorry, Johanna, we'll be more cognizant of that.
That's all right.
You had a
I
quick
just needed
comment
to know
before
their
we,
names. Thank you.
okay,
To tag along on the theme that they brought up from their neighborhood, because I feel it's the same in ours.
Okay.
We're getting all this information. Honestly, we're not understanding it.
Okay.
We're not understanding where it's coming from. We would like to understand more from a bird's eye view, what is the goal?
Okay.
It feels very piecemeal,
Okay.
and the maps, I in particular have a hard time with, like, I don't even know on the maps, I can't determine where my property is.
okay. Thank you. And your name was
I'm Karen Rutledge.
Karen Rutledge. Okay. All right.
Okay.
So I guess since we don't have decision points tonight, Ben, the idea is just more education and discussion. We'll likely table this issue, I'm assuming, and
Yeah, and you've got public comments that are coming in to talk about the new concept. You've got suggestions for additional public involvement, including offers to help with public involvement. So Exploring where we're at, I think, is important to know, to give direction so that everyone knows where we're going from here.
Okay, and I think from what I'm hearing, I mean, maps, everyone said the maps are an issue. So I don't know how, if we talk through this tonight, maybe we come back to this maybe in May, we find a way to maybe have maps on the wall and have it more interactive so people can see and know and understand. That'd be helpful. Because even if you dial down to these maps, these, the paper ones, they're so hard. And we've had meetings where you've blown things up and put them on the walls. And I know with COVID, we'd have to have like, maybe leave it open to have people come through, or I'm not sure how we would do that, but the larger maps are definitely easier to understand. So anyway, Jeff,
It's hard to separate. I mean, the maps from the text. I think you need to look at what those zoning designations are and what you like or what you don't like about those zoning designations before we start deciding what's going to be on a map. Because only when you know what the colors are that you're painting can you paint a map, basically. So I think it's important to go through and look at what we had in the existing ordinance. And there was some anomalies we looked at. We actually had larger lot sizes in R2 than we had in R1, which seems a bit strange that you would have a fairly high density small R3 lots, larger lots, smaller lots as you moved out from the city center in terms of access. So those were things that we looked at in terms of what is a logical growth from the city center and the services that are in the city center. When we looked at the map, we also looked at, well, what is the character of some of these neighborhoods? Because I think that's a critical question that people are raising in these letters that we've heard, and when we looked at them and saying, what sort of changes would you actually see on the ground with some of these zone changes, and how's that different than what's already allowed there? And then there are just some strange anomalies in terms of how things got zoned. There's little peninsulas and islands and things that, clearly in the past may have been done in response to one property owner, but it makes for sort of a strange zoning districts in some cases that don't really reflect how that sits on the land, what the topography is, what the surrounding uses are. That might just be an island or a projection. You can see that on some of the existing maps. And those are some of the things that Ben and I talked about. But again, I think it's important to go back, and as we think about what are we trying to accomplish in these updates, how do they go back and ground to the comprehensive plan, which is one of the things that we talked about? How does it provide for an orderly system of growth in terms of out from our city center, in terms of access to services, schools, and public facilities? How does it provide for the character of the neighborhood that people enjoy in this town? And many have for years. And how do we provide for the basic public services? Because one of the issues that's raised in the letter, obviously, is sewer. And if you look at how the sewer was laid out in this city, I'm not so sure you can say it was laid out with a very strong logic to begin with in terms of extending out. I live on the very eastern edge of this city, about as far from the downtown area, I think, as you can get and still be in the city. I'm on sewer. And yet there are folks that are much, much closer. And there has never been sewer extended out there. So when you look at the logic in terms of how we built these services, whether it's water, or whether it's sewer, or whether it's the roads, in some ways those have sort of evolved in sort of a haphazard way. And we're coming back and looking now and saying, does that make sense for the long-term development of the city? What do you do? And how do you move all of these things ahead? Because clearly when we have a zoning ordinance, I think as as some folks noted, with the notion that, septic systems would be formally prohibited. Well, we can't by a zoning ordinance guarantee the availability of sewer. And that's yet another
Mhm,
conversation for the city council to have in terms of where are those investments?
mhm.
And how do you finance those? And what's the role of the landowner in terms of participating in that? Those are questions you don't answer in a zoning ordinance, basically.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mhm.
August? I was gonna go around this,
That's
Deborah,
great.
and then
I'm
I'll
sorry.
make sure everybody has an opportunity to comment. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff's comments are really pertinent, and I think, looking back at what's the comprehensive plan, what's that overall, agenda, where are we trying to get to, and then checking back to where we are, and for whatever reason, like you said, there's these strange little pockets and anomalies. There was a reason that they happen, and sometimes we know why, and sometimes we don't, but how to incorporate and make sense of it going forward is important. So one of the questions I had was the difference between page 19 and 21. You got an R2 two-family district, and it says existing 2 units, updated draft 4 units. And then for the R1 single family, you have maximum 2 units, updated 4 units. Is the 2 units in the R1, are you considering the ADU as the second unit? Okay, it is not actually a duplex. That's a big difference. It can look just like a duplex. The
size is what prohibits it from being a true duplex, because if it's the ADU, it's got a size limitation.
Mhm.
only when it's an addition to an existing.
Mhm. That's not the way we wrote it.
There's if it's detached, there's a size limit. If it's attached to an existing building, there's an overall footprint expansion limit.
Right, but what
And
I'm
then-
saying is this looks like, when you say 2 units, you're saying 2 building units. It doesn't designate it as one of those is an ADU.
Okay.
When I look at it and see 2 units, I think 2
Mhm.
housing potential,
That's what I
not
have it.
a primary residence
Okay.
and an ADU. So that's not really,
Mhm.
in my thinking, 2 units. So when I looked at that, I was like, what is the substantial change here? And it looks like, that's a big difference. So in this updated draft, now it's saying that it's up to 4 units. I don't know that that was ever in the discussion that we've had so far.
That wasn't. So when you
Okay.
requested the middle ground R2, this is what I developed just as the draft for discussion.
Well, this is R1 I'm looking at.
It'd be the R1 areas that would change to the new
That
R2.
would change to R2, okay. And likewise for the R2 that would change to the R3.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess it was unclear enough for me reading it to see that, so I can understand how other people looking at it would be equally confused. But yeah, the 2 unit thing, I think needs some clarification on that. Because existing, yes, you can have an ADU, but it is not 2 units, which people think of as a duplex, or even if they're connected or not connected. That's all I have.
Thank you, August. Davey? Comment?
I echo Jeff's concerns about the sewer and water. I think you pretty much covered it pretty well. There was one other item, I think it was in one of the letters, Mr. May, I think it was, indicated that changing these R definitions wouldn't actually do anything to the square space. Has that been addressed, or? I'd have to go back in my notes and find it, but
I'm looking in Rick's letter right
Do you
now.
want me to just?
Yeah,
talk
so
about it? This is Rick May.
go ahead,
I have no
Rick.
idea.
So Rick May, Johanna.
So basically, I was looking at how many units can you put on to a site. So basically on the this is as far as looking at an R2 is currently 3,000 for one unit, and you can't do an ADU. So that means one unit for every 3,000 square feet. If you have a 6,000 square feet in the R1 and you can do basically a home, and then you can do an ADU unit, what you've done is you create two dwellings you can do. So basically you haven't changed the amount of actual dwellings that you can do. And you're right, they're going to be different sizes to be able to do, but you really haven't increased the density to be able to do. And, that was one of the things in the Skamania County and City of Stevenson Housing Needs Analysis that was really specific about it is that they have specific recommendations. And one of them was to increase the number of allowable AD units to 1 attached and 1 detached on zones. So there's a sheet over here that talks about all the things about putting senior housing into R1 and R2 zones and reducing setbacks and things like that. So there are some specific recommendations for the City of Stevenson that are in the housing needs analysis that might be useful.
Thank you. Much appreciated. David, does that answer your question? Was that what you were specifically talking about from Rick's letter?
I believe it does. And I have one point of clarification. It's tangentially related. Does the city have any plans to reconnect Delray?
Unknown at this point. A lot of that would depend on decisions made by the Delray neighborhood, including their development decisions. So unknown.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Davey. So
Can I speak to that since? Do you want to go through everything?
yeah, I'm almost
Okay,
done here. I'm gonna just get Mike here and then.
Said something that piqued my interest, but
Okay, yeah. So it's the road. I'll remember it's the road. Mike, go ahead.
I thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank Ben and Commissioner Breckel for doing the work on these latest revisions. And I also want to thank city staff for accommodating this mixed Zoom and in-person meeting. I certainly appreciate that. It seems to be going fairly well, I guess. But so good work, everybody. So anyway, addressing the proposed zoning changes. What I see in the latest revisions is I do see some scaling back of the amount of changes that we were discussing earlier this spring. And I think that Commissioner Breckel and Ben have tried to adapt the zoning map to reflect that more modest changes that we would be proposing in the city of Stevenson. And when I look at the reduction or in lot size requirement for homes, I see that as a modest change in square footage requirements on parcel sizes. And I also see the increase of the R2 or the new multi-family, how are we describing it, middle density, as being an adaptation that is in the line with the City of Stevenson comprehensive plan. Goals 2.7 at 3.2 and 8.9, and specifically 3.2, one of the tactics, 3.2-2 is ensure adequate and buildable areas for multi-family housing development. As the comments from Mary Rapar in the beginning of this meeting, you're describing the affordability crisis and the availability of housing is a concern that I think business owners and residents and want to be residents of the city share. Business owners need to have workers near where they're employed, and it makes it more amenable to those employers, if they can live near the places that they work. So when I see the changes that are proposed here tonight with the latest map and the latest text changes, I see a plan for the future of the city of Stevenson that's modest and accommodates future growth, potential for increasing housing density in the city, working towards the expansion of the sewer system. Although as Commissioner Breckel mentioned, and Davey also mentioned, Commissioner Ray also mentioned how the city council would have to consider the expansion of the sewer system and how that can be funded. I see that this plan and the way the zoning text is being changed reflects a move by the city of Stevenson towards some of the overarching goals that we've set for ourselves in the comprehensive plan. So when I look at this in the latest iteration, I see positive potential for the city of Stevenson. These would be property owner driven. Commissioner Breckel mentioned what kind of changes would we see? We really wouldn't see anything until a person with a piece of property and investment potential decides to make a change. And these proposed changes would allow greater density, perhaps more, although this isn't a goal of this change, provide more housing in the city as property owners rise to that, what they see as an economically viable opportunity for them to increase housing in the city of Stevenson. So I support these changes. I personally feel that a more expansive density changes similar to the March proposal is more called for, but I think this April revisions are a good compromise for the city of Stevenson and the residents of city of Stevenson moving forward. The text specifically, Ben mentions how the middle density residential district is intended to facilitate a range of residential uses in walkable areas. I think this plan speaks to that well. So thank you, Ben, and the work that the commissioners have done on this. I certainly support the changes as we see them here presented tonight.
Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Before I open up the public comment, I just have a quick question for Ben. I'm not understanding the restrictive development, the two G and H, prohibiting new use of septic systems.
So currently, properties in the R2 and the R1 district can choose whether they develop using the public sewer system or private on-site septic systems, so long as they're more than 300 feet away from an existing system. And so we see a lot of scattered development that is built on septic systems.
Right.
And so they choose to stay out of the city sewer system, and the sewer system doesn't then extend past that property to serve the next one up the hill or anything.
So I'm not understanding because it's
Yeah.
prohibiting new use of septic systems. So let's say I want to put an ADU on, can I continue to use my septic for the house and I put an ADU detached behind my house and then I'm going to be required to hook up to sewer?
Yeah. Yeah, I understand your question.
Because that
Not
could be,
yes
that could
to the
be,
question. So
definitely cost
if you
prohibitive.
have an existing system, you are able to stay on that system until it fails. This is the same process that's available to others. So when that fails, then you would have to connect to the new system. So you don't have to invest anything into the sewer connection until your existing septic system fails. Now, if your existing system is built to handle 3 bedrooms and your addition
That was my next
triggers
question.
the expansion, I don't know how to deal with, I don't know what the environmental health department would say about that and whether that would be allowed. So I
Because
don't,
somebody could have a septic system for 3 bedrooms and their current house is 2 and they're adding a 1-bedroom ADU. In
Mhm.
theory, they should be able to use their current septic system, correct?
If the county approved that, yes.
Okay.
right, those decisions are outside.
And some of that has to, if the house was built, say the tank itself is designed for 3 bedrooms,
Mhm.
but the house only had 2, they may have only put drain field in to accommodate that
Ah.
capacity. And that would be an element of whether that data was in there or not.
Okay.
The older
So when
it
it's
is, the
community.
less people know.
All right. So it's community health that would be dealing with that.
I think the
Jeff?
more fundamental issue here is if there is no sewer to hook up to,
What do we
and
do?
I can't use a septic system,
Right.
I don't have an option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Precluded.
value just decreases dramatically.
Okay.
So I think, when we look at that, we need to be thinking, how do you dovetail this in with improving the infrastructure that's needed before you penalize the landowner?
Right. So where's Carl when we need him? I mean, that's a really valid question. I think we need answered in all honesty before,
If you-
because if we're going through this process, I mean, I would like to see all the puzzle pieces together
Yeah.
and not missing any. That's, I mean,
There's two different categories of people that I think about in this. There are all the existing homes that may be on septic who, the concept of extending a sewer line to an existing home, there's no profit in that
Mhm.
for you. And then there's raw land development, where you're choosing the number of lots you're gonna do on a property, and you've got a pro forma to say, how much does the sewer extension cost? How much am I likely to make on this? Can I do more lots? How do I make this work? And so, you know, as an example of the one type for Angel Heights or the Hidden Ridge subdivisions on the west end of town where they're developing now, there was no sewer system anywhere close to either one of those. They extended that system in order to do the land division. It's all part of the housing cost. Essentially, when somebody goes in to buy the land, build a home. And
that's a new development and a large
and-
development. So this situation's quite a bit
And
different, right?
and there are vacant lands here that have the ability to make those decisions. For areas where there's existing development, one, you don't have to extend a sewer until your system fails if you're on it. And the sewer system extent includes all the current R2 areas and R3 areas.
Okay.
It's the areas of the R1 where there may or may not be sewer. And so for the property owners in that first category, the city is looking to extend one sewer line right now as part of the overall funding package that we're doing with the plant expansion. And so that'd be taking it here from City Hall up to Frank John's.
Mhm.
That's an area that annexed to the city specifically because they were having failing septics.
Mhm.
And so you have to be within city limits to have access to city sewer. Their septics were failing. They agreed to annex with the expectation that a sewer line would be extended. That was around 2005.
Oh, wow.
And the city didn't live up to its promise there to get that line extended. So now each one of those landowners have incurred their own expense
Mhm.
to completely replace their systems. So there's something that's something that the city council will have a chance to correct with it in this area. I don't know what the current estimates are to make that correction. But we'll work through that. Putting together these other projects, it becomes a capital improvement planning process where we're also looking at where there's a potential for development and developer to incur some of the cost for extending that line. There are other tools, and it's been a while since we went through that exercise, but I think you were on the planning commission where we looked at the different tools and possibilities to develop land, and we talked about local improvement districts as an option, latecomer agreements as an option. So all those things are still there. There's a process to do those. We haven't proactively gone out and said, we want to extend the sewer line in your area and we want you to pay for it.
Right. Okay.
But we do respond to people who are looking for help paying for a sewer line if they want to develop.
All right. Thank you. That's and I just quickly, the prohibiting structures near driveways, is this the issue we had about the front porches? We worked through this before. Okay. Make sure I was understand the problem. So
Yeah.
At this point, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And just please, I'm sorry, go ahead,
Can I
August.
circle back?
Yeah, we can. Go ahead, August. Really quickly.
So on page 31, I'm looking at the R2 and the R1 districts again. And I see a change again in the R2 where we go from 2 units that's currently allowed, and I'm assuming this is the change actually in the R2 district, not in the district that is changing to R3, is that instead of having 2 units in the R2, we're now going to have 4 units instead of allowing ADUs as an accessory unit. That's a little bit different because now you're talking about, you know, there's some protection for and the way that the neighborhood feels with the ADU. I mean, we were real particular about spacing and size and construction. If you're going to say, instead of 2 units, now you can build 4 units, that's a big difference in an R2 if you're trying to maintain that feel of that kind of neighborhood. Whereas if it was allowing accessory dwellings like you did in the R1, it gives you that ability to increase housing, but in a much more, you know, resigned kind of way. That's just me looking at it. That wasn't what I thought was the direction we were going in when we were talking about making it more equitable between the R1 and the R2, what's allowed, because, you know, there is a potential there that would you know, be good to capitalize on. But I think 4 units is really starting to, I think that's going to create some kickback.
Thank you, August.
Yeah, those are all totally policy questions for you guys to discuss. The draft text here was comparing it to the no limit of the R3. And so having some additional ability to develop on those properties, but limiting it and limiting the overall amounts of change that would be likely there. So.
Right. And the same goes for those areas that we're talking about doing a little tweak from the R2 to the R3. Now you don't have any maximum restrictions. That's a pretty, depending on where you are neighborhood wise, that's a pretty substantial change in the way that feels also.
Mm-hmm.
So this concern that I hear the citizens having of, you know, hey, hang on, I didn't buy a house and decide to retire here so that I could live next to an apartment complex, you know, and I think that's something that we still need to keep in mind.
Thank you. And I'll just add on just the feel of the neighborhood. I know we had moved here from Tualatin 8 years ago, and we lived next to an orchard. And of course, land started getting bought up and things started getting built, and a lot of apartments went in nearby. But one of the things they did was, this is almost like an infill as opposed to like the ADU is what you're saying. So they take the old bungalow house, right? And then you'd have house, you know, that's like 4 large houses, and they tried to kind of update the bungalow to kind of make it look like the new construction. But honestly, it didn't fit into the feel of the neighborhood. And you could tell it was an old house that they just plunked as many new construction houses as they could around this house. And it was very poorly done infill. And I would like to not see that happen here. So.
Which you can have pretty easily.
Yeah.
You could have that, really. I mean, there's nothing to say you couldn't.
Right. So before I move on and open to public comment, Davey or Mike, just any quick clarifications before we open it?
All good.
Okay.
This is Mike. In terms of infill and changes to the current land uses, it is somewhat of a cliche, but the only thing that stays the same is change. If land values get so high and houses deteriorate in the city of Stevenson, even with the existing zoning, a person landowners may elect to begin to do tear downs and build maxi houses, which build out to the maximum size of the lot. You'll see that in other cities. You'll see that happening here in Stevenson if prices go up and the zoning does not change. So change could occur in neighborhoods even without any zoning changes. This is something that I think residents have to be aware of, is that the city is not cemented in place the moment you buy a piece of property. Change is constant in a city. These zoning changes are minor. Changes will not happen immediately. They'll be market driven by property owners making investments. And change could happen even without any zoning being changed.
Thanks, Mike. So Ben, you were gonna say something? I was gonna open up what,
Process-wise, you
how
want
do you want to
to go
handle?
through Zoom
We could.
first?
Do we have anybody with their hand? I think just one
One.
person?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure who it is.
Did that not do it? No? Okay, for the person on the phone or on the Zoom call with your hand up, you can unmute yourself on the bottom left of your screen and contribute if you'd like.
And please state your name. I'm not sure who that is. Do you
Yeah.
want to do Annie?
Yeah, let's move to.
All right, Annie, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good. Thanks for all this updated information. I really appreciate the efforts of everyone, including the comments coming from the audience. I think it's very important that we're all having our voices heard. I live in this area, would be affected at some point to some degree. But I'm okay with these modest changes that are being suggested. I am in agreement with some of you that, you know, we can't make certain that our city is not going to change the moment we buy property. But I would like to have some control over how it changes. And if there's anything that we can do to do a modest attempt at that, I'm in favor of it. And I'm wondering too, from a city perspective, what the council and the planning commission in tangent might be able to come up with in terms of designing what can be done with these modest changes, if anything. And so that's the conversation I'm wanting to have. If we go forward with this, is there any control that we have to kind of design changes that we would want to see as a collective in the areas that are going to be impacted? And I'm going to mute myself now.
Okay, thank you, Annie.
Okay.
I'm not sure who that person is.
Do going once.
Yeah, we'll see if they unmute them. Oh,
They may be
Hey.
having trouble with their audio. I had trouble establishing audio earlier.
they have their hand up, but they're not having trouble unmuting. Let's unmute. It's *6. All right, we'll come back if we see them unmute. Okay, so I'll go around, and if you guys could just state your name for our minute taker, I'd really appreciate it. So who would like to start? You're at the beginning.
Okay, just a couple of thoughts to add to that great pile that Jeff gave us. I thought a lot of good ideas there, Jeff. In the studies, particularly the EDC study, there's lots of reference to within walking distance, but it's all for multi-family housing. So it sort of leaves you with the idea people who live in the McMansions don't need to walk, but they're doing it, and they walk past my house all the time. So there's something a little out of kilter. And when I see the old traditional donut going on here, it says all the low-income folks kind of live down here and us other folks live up there. Maybe we should do it the other way around, because those other folks who live up there probably need to walk more than the ones who live down here. Anyway, I don't know what the solution is, but one of the reasons some of us like it down here in our R2 and R1 is just exactly that. I can walk to the hardware store in about 2 minutes. That's pretty nice. And I don't want to lose that opportunity and lose the neighborhood. So there's something at play there that kind of bothers me. The other thought I had was, I don't suppose anybody here lived through extending services and not extending services outside the city. But I have, and I think it's just general bad policy to extend sewer and water outside the city limits without annexation.
Mhm.
It's gonna come back to bite you. I can guarantee it. I was here shortly after this town was mandated by the state to go on a sewer system. And it was, believe me, it was a mess. And I mean, there was coliform running through the yards. So even though it's a very difficult situation for some landowners, I think it would be better, if it's possible, to handle that on the basis of an exception rather than an overall policy that we're gonna just out of pocket extend those services. When I saw that in the consultant's report, I thought they said the challenge for the city is to figure out how to extend services within a half mile of the city. But they did not talk about what that really meant. To me, that meant our challenge is to figure out when development occurs, we need to be able to extend services, not the other way around, extend services to willy-nilly whoever shows up or whatever, and they don't have to annex or do anything else that in turn would benefit the city in the long run, maybe, I don't know. Just a thought about that from what we've been through before and the hardship cases that came and all the things that were going on. And the city originally was just kind of extending services, even water by itself.
Mhm.
And that just created unbelievable problems. Not that there aren't still a lot of problems. I'm amazed at all of the problems that people bring up about lack of sewer within the built-up part of the city, so on and so forth. Just a couple thoughts.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Tracy Grotto. So I was one of the neighbors that organized gathering my neighbors because I was out for a walk because Phil and I like to walk up and down our street quite a bit, and asked Phil, I really care about this letter Ben sent, and when Ben sends things out, I tend to pay close attention to them. But I couldn't understand it. And I asked Phil for a little bit of guidance, and Phil has since probably lamented my question because he's probably put about 30 hours into trying to answer, what does this mean? So thank you, Phil.
And you don't know any more now.
I do not envy you all the task of taking this level of complex policy making and language and making it understandable to the public. But I'm here to sort of implore that you try. And Ben coming and having a very educational conversation with us is a great first step rather. So we've got half of our neighbors came to the meeting, which is a lot with a very short, during COVID and all this, and are very concerned. But we didn't know exactly what we were concerned about. And so I would like to get an answer from you all tonight, if that's possible, about what kind of public involvement process can we partner together on. I think you've got a handful of us here that are interested in bringing both our own experiences doing public involvement in other communities. But I'm not aware of the timelines, et cetera, but I would like it to be a partnership. I don't want it to be me hosting a bunch of neighborhood meetings and doing all the heavy lifting. I don't have the bandwidth for that. But I do think there's an opportunity to make this broader than those just living within the districts. Because I do think this is, to Annie's point and to several other commenters' point, it's a design issue. It's a look and feel. These numbers don't mean a ton to some of us. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean it that I can't make a leap between a number and an implication. And so again, I would actually like to pull in that design question to say, if these are modest changes, what are the things that people care about seeing alongside these changes. So is it a certain amount of green space? Is it a certain amount of design standards, et cetera? So I'm here both to make an ask and an offer. I think the forums that we would want would need to have very plain language, and I think that's a tough task. But I think language, communication and verbal conversation helps. I think the maps, getting those clearer is going to be important. I also think really helping people understand the problem statement or the goals associated. I think we'll get people on board, quite honestly, and engaged. And frankly, perhaps even caring more about Mary's topic, which I think a lot of us care about. How does this have a direct line to affordable housing? And then I think lastly, just, getting the data, just so we understand the problem statement is supported with data. So if there's anything available for that, I know we're looking at the housing needs analysis, the EDC, the comprehensive plan is something y'all are pointing to. I'd love to know how to get my hands on that. I was looking for it today, but not for too long. So maybe Ben, you can help me out with that. I would be willing to help. I think we would be doing some of the outreach. Meaning the offer would be outreach, attending, helping thought partner on what an agenda could look like, et cetera. So as I said, this is, while it might feel minor to you all, we don't know. And so again, I just would like to hear if you all would be interested in a public involvement process moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you. I've got all those comments written down. Marvelous. Rick?
Hi.
Rick May.
Thank you. By the way, I really think that the underlying effort here, which is to make development easier, try to drive down pricing for affordable housing, that's really a noble goal to have. I really think that I hope that these proposed changes are really driven by trying to look into the future and trying to see, well, what likely will Stevenson need? What kind of housing needs do we have into the future? And I think that the Skamania County and City of Stevenson Housing Need Analysis and the Johnson Economic Report, they were created to try to answer those questions for us. And they really do. They do an excellent job of it. The housing need analysis, I'll just read a short paragraph. Stevenson is the only focal area with a likely potential to accommodate significant additions to the missing middle housing supply. Under current zoning and infrastructure plans, Stevenson has the potential capacity to add 886 units of missing middle housing on vacant land, 262 units on part vacant land, and 194 units on redevelopment land. So basically, if you go to their little next page for Exhibit 4.8, townhouses and multifamily cottages and plexes, we have 1,342 available unit capacity. That's what's already out there. The Johnson Economic Report on Stevenson notes that Stevenson will need about 57 multifamily and single-family attached units over the next 10 years. So they're saying we need 57 multifamily and single-family attached units. We'll need probably about a little, like 100 and some more units maximum that are going to be attached single-family dwellings, which are not even in this list. And we have 1,342. So you try to calculate that in there, and we're all going to be way dead and gone before we're even getting close to be able to absorb that kind of supply. So you have to ask yourself the question, why are we doing this? I mean, I can understand coming back and allowing more capacity in the R1 zones themselves. That makes perfectly good sense. But to try to make R2 land, more R2 land available, when you have 1,342 available right now, seems to me to be not focusing on what the real need is.
Thanks, Rick. And I haven't looked at that report. I'm curious. Middle housing, was there a definition in there? I'm not.
Yeah, it was townhouses and multifamily.
That's what they're considering middle.
Plexes,
Okay, got it. Okay, got it.
And look at page 31, Exhibit 4.8.
Okay, thank you.
You'll see Stevenson in there, and that will go. They'll look at all of what's available.
When was that drafted? That
That was
particular?
2020. I think it came out in January
Okay, I haven't
2020.
seen it. Okay.
And then
All
the
right.
other one is the Johnson Economic Report. And that one was in 2019. And is a lot more Stevenson specific.
Mhm.
And that report's, both of those reports are really excellent reports, and they've got a lot of recommendations. I mean, if you guys haven't read them, that's kind of your starting point, because these folks have done the heavy lifting for you.
Well, that Jeff and Ben were working on that together.
Yeah, and I've certainly looked at that, and it's useful, but it's not definitive. And I think you have to look at it in that way. I mean, it may say, yeah, you've got all that capacity out there, but how do you utilize that capacity? How do you move into that? How do you extend services? You know, what's that logical growth pattern you have out there? So we don't end up with areas that aren't adequately serviced with roads or water or sewer.
And those are great questions, Jeff. And I think those are the questions that we need to ask, instead of going and saying, well, okay, let's take and we'll just change this zoning in this whole area. I think that we have to go back and look at that question in more detail about how do you get services up here, and how do you do it affordable? And then, you know, look at the recommendations back here that create an allowable density, a higher density already in the R1 zone, and how can we put those particular things in? And I think you're going to get a lot less pushback from everybody too.
I think that may well be the case. I think, you know, there's no tremendous urgency for a decision on this.
Well,
No.
there might be, and that's where Ben could help us, because isn't there a grant where, and it says deliverables in it, and part of that grant requires R3 for you to get the money? Or what? Tell us.
No, and even.
So, I mean, what is driving this? And I'm not trying to be
What's his
suspicious, but that is one of our questions.
So Pat Rice.
Pat Rice.
Pat Rice.
I'm not gonna let you get away.
Related to, I think a lot of us are saying, what is driving this during
Yeah.
COVID to happen, work so fast?
I disagree with working fast, and you always say that, but we always just come and have conversations, and we're always
It
restarting
wasn't
the
a put down
conversation.
comment the way I put that. I don't.
So, but the needs were identified in this housing needs analysis that was just done in 2020. And so now we've done the analysis, we've got recommendations from that. We know that we need additional housing, or all of our affordability is going to decrease. Cost of new housing is going to increase. The cost of rentals will continue to increase. The cost of all of our utilities will continue to increase unless we get enough new housing to decrease those things based on all the different market mechanics that are involved in each one of those. So we had the analysis, we moved into a regulatory change recommended by the analysis. We got a grant to help us with that.
Okay.
The grant isn't a driver of timelines though. And so we,
But it does have as one of the deliverables to change some stuff to R3, right?
there's two sets of deliverables. The first is the analysis staff reports, and the second set of deliverables is the ordinance change. And so we've made some of those ordinance changes with the R3 zoning discussion before. The specific outcome identified in the grant, well, to get to your question, if we change it to R2 and not R3, they'll still give us funding.
Okay.
So the community conversation needs to happen before any ordinance change goes. And the granting agency knows that just because we submitted a scope of work at the staff level doesn't mean that the community agrees with that. And so going through the involvement process to determine what the community agrees to.
The grant was for the involvement process, right? So you got paid money to do the involvement process. And I think that's what we're talking about here, because for example, in the neighborhood I live, you know that I could go through and I know all the property owners and we talk to all of them. And in fact, 100%, even the ones on the north side of Delray, do not want the south side of Delray to be R3. Yet it is R3, I mean, on your thing. And so we just think, okay, fine, they talk about citizen involvement. We think, well, who in our neighborhood is ever going to accept this? I mean, in other words, and then I look in the city packet And it says that one of the goals for the city in 2020 was to communicate with the Delray neighborhoods, without quoting, what their neighborhood would end up looking like. That discussion has not happened, and that was 2020. You were correct in that you put it not as a completed goal, it was a blank, because it wasn't done. Even though we've been talking with ourselves, we would gladly accept that conversation. We in fact brought a bureaucrat, Rick Gustafson from Portland, who designed the light rail system there, to come and talk to our neighborhood. He's a well-noted guy that is a big shot in Portland and knows more than all of us who ever put together on land use planning. He came in and helped our neighborhood. And we had that at our house in different locations. And then I read that goal and I got upset because I thought, you know who should have, and that was to drive discussion. How can we, Terry Smith, sell his lot and get access? He's already sold it to another lot to the Wilsons. He wants access. We figured out different accesses. Carl has been actually excited at times and said we could put access here and here. Then we talked to Rick, negotiated with Rick May on where he could build his houses, how to get access, how many stuff for driveway and stuff. He came in and helped us. Well, when I read that, I thought, wait a minute. You know, if we want, and Karen and I own 5 pieces of property right now that we could put houses on. We would gladly put affordable housing on it. We have 5, are buildable right now. So if you want to build and you want to increase density and you want to help people that can't afford houses, the way to do that is to start building in our neighborhood. And we've been begging to start building. Rick's trying to build some stuff. Terry Smith is trying to build. We have lots. I'd start building on it tomorrow, a small home. But what it is, and I won't start on the obstacles to that, but it's not your current zoning. It's that you're not, what I woke up thinking is, how come we're bringing in Rick Gustafson? How come Karen and I are leading the charge, getting all our neighbors, some who have been mad at each other different times, to talk? When it was mandated the city have those discussions with us. And so we think, how come Ben's not here doing this? Where's Carl? We're struggling to put houses here now, and nobody's helping us. Instead, what we get is, it's like we're held hostage. It's like we're told, you know what? For example, Delray, putting that through. And not abandoning it and stuff. They said, well, we're going to do a traffic study. So we read in the traffic study that fine, you're going to do traffic study means you go out and get facts, figures, do traffic counts. Where does the traffic go now? Where could it go later? We find in there, in the RFP that is done, that they ask the person to cost out the completion of Delray. We don't even know if an honest traffic engineer would ever say to put a street there. Maybe they'd say, why would you do that? You're going to divide a neighborhood in 2. Nobody wants it. You only got 4 cars there. We had a city, an elected official come and visit with us today, and the person was at our house for about 3 hours. When the person left, I said, you know the last car that came down the street? You, when you parked in our driveway. And that was the truth. So what I'm trying to say is always a cart before the horse, like cramming zoning for R3 down our next without talking to us when 100% don't want it, telling the traffic engineer, tell us how much the street costs there before he does the traffic counts, and a trained person will tell him, well, how come you're not letting Terry Smith do this or that? In other words, that's why, and then you get money to do public involvement. It feels like, and then the gentleman on there that was very articulate that is in favor of passing this, I understand. But what I'm trying to say is, where is the empathy? Where, in other words, I'm wanting to believe you, but I don't. And I think, Ben, for example, if you want housing, all you got to do, like the neighbor Cesar Hernandez that I'm trying to help build a house right now, all you got to do is, I had 3 emails to you the last month to try to get the habitat biologist taken care of. I never got an answer. You offered to help me and you were very kind. That house is not going to get built as quickly as we need to because of City Hall. Right now he's ready to build. We got the money, but he's not going to build yet because we need the habitat biologist report done. And we found a habitat biologist to give the report. He's written your report. You're not happy with his answer. Well, fine. Then please call the guy up, tell him, hey, you screwed this up. Give me a pretty little graph there so we can build. So I'm trying to say, I think the problem is City Hall right now. One more thing and then I'll shut up because I only have 3 minutes. The poor person who came in, who's low income to build the house, comes in and fills out the form with Mary. Mary sends them out with 4 more forms. Telling you, the poor guy came over to my house to help fill out the form, but it's, any computer literate person would have redesigned their system to where all the forms have the same information. He fills it out on one form and it populates on all the other forms. There are probably about 15 different things that any developer, Rick could tell you, that I could tell you, to make it more user-friendly, to get these houses built now. And we actually, it's frustrating for me to work my whole life to have money to where I could actually build a house on any of these lots starting tomorrow if I wanted to. I'm trying to help that guy. And I can't spend my money if I wanted to because you've made it difficult. And I'll just say one more thing. We get council members that will say, well, hey, small houses will have the infrastructure cost be lower. 1 bathroom, if it's not 3, then they'll pay less hookup fees. Where are the rules? Saying if you build a McMansion, it's going to cost you more. Somebody like Pat going to put a 750 square foot, nice, beautiful, modern house here, will pay less. Do that. But those don't happen. Instead, we have these big esoteric debates. So I'm just trying to say that pick the low-hanging fruit first. And because there's fruit out there to be picked right now. But and I apologize for getting emotional, but that's what happens when you're actually out there doing the hard work and you have the money to build and you work hard your whole life to have the money, and you come to City Hall and you get hit with bureaucracy. And Ben, I know you're going to be upset with me for speaking this passionately. I actually like you. And I'm trying to say that even then, so that we need help. Not sending them to you in the mail saying this is R3 now. Because that isn't going to work. All it's going to make me do is go talk to all my neighbors and we're all going to hate it.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mrs. Rice, would you, any
Well,
comments?
she kept her last name and now you know why.
Oh, I'm sorry. What it is?
Karen Rutledge.
Oh, Karen Rutledge. Excuse me.
I won't talk about.
No, go ahead.
First of all, I want to thank you guys for the work that you're doing. I think it is extremely important and I think it's really hard and I could not do it because my brain does not work that way. I have a hard time because you know what? I can't even understand this map then. and this is supposed to be information digestible, I assume, to the average person, you know, which I think I probably fall at least into the average category. And I cannot understand what you're saying in these documents. So maybe what we need to do is break it down and have these like forums, whether it's at the Hegewald with a bunch of people or in a neighborhood with 5 people, and have more basic information. Because I don't know, I just think these are really difficult tools to learn from. And especially because it is an emotional issue. So when you realize, oh, they're talking about my property, they're talking about right next to me, the adrenaline goes up, much more difficult to understand what it is they're actually saying. So that's all.
Okay,
And I
thank
would
you.
say she does have a degree in business, so it's not like she
Oh.
doesn't, she puts herself down. So if she can't understand it, believe me, a lot of other people can.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just
Yes,
one
ma'am.
question before, just
Go
from a
ahead.
process perspective. Will there be a decision made about yes or no for more public involvement?
We're gonna
tonight,
actually
or-
we'll actually, some of these things on the list that everybody's talked about, we'll go around and have a
Okay,
discussion.
yes, I just
Absolutely.
didn't know process.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'll just.
Sir?
I just wanted to reinforce what Tracy is talking about. I've tried to look at the process up to this point, and it looks pretty great as far as development, business interests and so on. I think Rick summarized that nicely. I'd say yay for that part of it. But the whole part of it that represents the other stakeholders just has not been used. That's us. And that's the part that has to do with livability, quality of life issues. When I read those reports, there's nothing in there about quality of life unless you're talking about, can I afford an apartment or whatever? That's clearly a quality of life, but I'm talking about a whole nother set of stuff. What makes people want to come here? These hordes are coming here for a reason. And they're coming from places that are a lot less desirable to live in. And in the process of this helter-skelter growth, we may toss all that stuff out the window and say, you should have been here in the good old days when this place was nice. We don't have to do that. So I think the citizen part of it gives that perspective in a way that the studies have not done so far. It's unfortunate that that study didn't include the other half of the stakeholders or an advocate for them. And I realize that you all, in a sense, are part of that advocacy, but you can't even keep up with the mechanics of what you have to do. Reaching out to these other things looks like a big add-on to me. So I think there is some salvation here with what Tracy is suggesting, that some of us are willing to put some effort into that. We've done it before, and it might help with that part of this process. So I hope maybe you'll think of that favorably.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Rick, one more, and then we're gonna go around.
Then you're gonna go around, you're gonna give me one more time.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
No, we're gonna go around this way. But go ahead, really quickly.
Okay, one of the things is that, you know, we're trying to create, are you trying to create flexibility, which I think is really great. You know, in what does flexibility look like? And one of the things that, again, is the concern is that if you don't have sewer lines coming in, like we got a neighbor right up here that has acreage right up here that wanted to build this year and COVID stopped, and they're a couple that's just gonna retire, and they work for a college up in Northern Washington and come down and be able to do it. And they're 480 feet up this road from the sewer line. And then they're 300 feet down a road, 310 feet down a road to be able to do it. So I did a quick calculation of what it would take to go down and go in there. And it's like 3 times the value of that lot. So if they try to come in there and do it, to run 480 feet of sewer line up Kanaka Creek, tear it up and put it in there. And then you'd have to go 310 feet down that line to be able to do that. That would be multiple times more than the value of their particular parcel would be. So basically, economically, they would be stopped to be able to develop that property. And that's one of my concerns, is that if you want flexibility, you can bring this in. One thing going back to these studies, the housing needs analysis, is they really were very specific. And again, I'll read one little paragraph and then I'll quit. The county should commission a sewer study that looks at the variety of collection conveniences and treatment options to address both long and intermediate term sewer needs. The feasibility should discuss parameters, including cost, maintenance, permitting future effluent flow, and the ability to develop an interim system prior to a full build out of a public system. There are a variety of systems: vacuum systems, septic tank effluent systems, local and regional tanks, and a variety of packaging residentials to regional treatment technologies that could pave a way for residential densities exceeding limits under septic regulations. So they're saying, do the study.
That's for the county though, right?
That's for
the county. Because we've already
Well,
done
that was because this was a county analysis, but you know, obviously that is very
That's
applicable.
not true. That they have specific recommendations for the city of Stevenson area and others in the county. And so what they're looking at with that is for development of the Carson area.
Well, they're talking about places with public systems. Okay, we have a public system. They're talking about countywide,
places
and they're
with,
talking about areas that are outside the county. Those are all going to be septic systems.
they're talking about places without a public system. And before you install a full public system, with places that have a system, they have recommendations to look at extending it.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I know, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I read it completely different, but that's fine.
So I'm just seeing if anyone has their hand up, and I'm still not sure who that is up there. So we'll go back to the planning commission. Jeff, I'll let you start. Unless you have anything you'd like to.
So with the public involvement, you guys are used to getting the complaints about the public involvement. It's the first task that we do before we start looking at the details of a policy. So the planning commission sets the public involvement strategy. So for this one, well, the minimum that they have to do is to hold a public hearing. The planning commission needs to review a proposal and recommend city council action on it. And I think that there's a second one. Planning commission never chooses the minimum on this. And so for this one, they wanted the community questionnaires for all the topics. They wanted direct physical mailers to people. They established the liaisons for the planning commission for our 2 property owners, from the city council for our 1 property owners who live in that area where the change might occur. And then they hold these workshops and iterative workshops to go through it. So the suggestion that you got a letter and said that now your property is R3 is very far away from what the Planning Commission's intent was in reaching out to you and talking about those issues and trying to make it really simple in those community questionnaires about should owner occupancy be required for a second unit? Should the R3 regulations apply? Should multifamily development require a sewer system? So they're trying. I think they're always hearing that they don't get it right. And so I'm hoping that we can focus on what is right and just reevaluating that first step process for what that is. That's all I got.
Thanks, Ben. Jeff?
It's always hard to get folks to come out and sit in a public meeting, a planning commission meeting, to talk about these issues until it has some direct impact on them. And then obviously you have folks that will be there. Again, I don't feel a rush to complete this work. I think what we have done is we have certainly refined a proposal out there that hopefully will lead to some additional discussion. And I think it is important to have these public conversations. You know, I'm relatively certain that most people don't know what their existing property is zoned or what they can do on it. They don't know. You know, and now we say, well, we're going to change that, and all of a sudden, well, gosh, what does that mean? What does that mean to the character that I like in my neighborhood? And what are these changes? And how does it differ from what how I'm already regulated out there? So I empathize with folks, trying to get folks interested in where we want this community to be in the future. You know, I really enjoyed the downtown planning process because we had those workshops. We brought folks to do, you know, that process. And I would certainly like to have these additional conversations with folks where we could sit down and say, what's it you like about your neighborhood? You know, hey, here's the zoning that you have now. Here's some of the things we're looking at in the future in terms of issues that we need to deal with. Here's some ideas. What do you think? Because I think rather than coming to an answer, it's coming to the right answer. That's where we want to be. And some of these are hard decisions. Yeah, not everybody's going to be happy.
Thank you, Jeff. August?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That was good. Yeah, a little bit to Mike's point about change and the reluctance to visualize and accept the change is coming. The flip side to that is, you know, you're looking at the entity as the city creating these restrictions or alleviating restrictions. And then there's the people that live in the city. And it's like, where's it? The city works for those individuals. It's not the other way around. You know, and I'm not, well, I guess I am sort of employed by the city. We're working for our fellow residents. I mean, we all live here in the city, and that's our concern, and that's why we're involved and interested in it, because we are trying to make a plan for the future. You know, we're trying to look 10 years down the road, and if we don't have that input from people, like Jeff said, it's not until someone says, "Oh, you want to do what in next to me?" And then they're interested in the conversation. It's like, okay, where were you 8 years ago when we were saying, "Hey, what do you want to happen next door?" "Oh, I was too busy." Right. You know, this isn't something we're talking about changing tomorrow. This is something, you know, that's going to be 10 years, you know, 20 years, what is the comprehensive plan? And that's, touching back to that is, what direction does the community feel that it wants to go? And that's not going to be a straight line. It may be that 20 years ago, the community said, oh, what's happening? We wanted this and that. And then now it looks and says, God, look at Hood River. I don't want to live there. I can't afford to live there. I don't want that. So you have to have that organic ability to change even the comprehensive plan. And that's why it's rewritten, periodically is for that change, because some visions that you have, I mean, who envisioned that COVID would happen? This has changed the way that everything happens. It makes sense that then that may be part of the consideration of where we go forward with a comprehensive plan or some aspects of that. So, I think the involvement is really important, and the respect to the homeowners and property owners is really the most important thing. And to remember that, this city is because of them and for them. They are the ones that decided to move here. They're the ones that are invested here. They are the lifeblood. And if we are trying to push them further than their comfort zone, that's kind of on us for pushing too much, So I do feel that this progression of zoning, even in my mind, it's a little bit too rushed. It's moving too much from the comprehensive plan 10 years from now to, we need to move all the zoning and have it happen next year. And I think that's just too quick for a lot of people to wrap their heads around.
Okay, thank you, August. Davey?
I'll just echo a few things here. One of the first things they teach you in planning school is, get the input on the front end, you'll get it on the back end. And it won't necessarily be the most productive thing. I empathize with the feelings, the comments made about you got a finite amount of time on the planet to do something with your property. But I mean, we are in the business of doing the bestest for the mostest. And Johanna can take some liberties with spelling there. I do agree that with August about, staying in line with the comprehensive plan. A lot of work went into doing that. So deviations from that they're doable, but we do have to look at them with that perspective in mind. And thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Davey.
Thank you, everybody who came for your input in the meeting.
Okay. Thanks, Davey. I'm going to go on to Mike. Mike, go ahead, and then we'll get to folks who have their hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to say that this has been a remarkably difficult last year, and I hope that the members of the public look back and recognize that we have been under COVID restrictions in terms of how meetings can be handled and how groups can come together. I think that Ben and the city and the direction that the Planning Commission had given to try to gather public comment was the best that we could do given the restrictions over this last year. This is the very first meeting, I believe, that there had been an opportunity for people to come back into City Hall and meet in person. So I understand that the public would like to be more involved, but when you think about over the last year, it's been very difficult to try to bring together groups of people to have these discussions. And I think that we will have an opportunity to do more of that moving forward. But it always has been, at least during my tenure on the Planning Commission, to try to garner more public involvement into some of these topics and discussion items that are before the Planning Commission. And I think that the city and the Planning Commission has at least attempted to try to accommodate that during this last year of COVID restriction. In moving back to these proposed changes, I think the city, the Planning Commission, and the residents, we have some good guidance already in the comprehensive plan, in the housing needs analysis, and they show potential to the city of Stevenson and how there can be changes made to accommodate future growth in a way that's still harmonious with the city as it exists, and how the plan and how the comprehensive plan looks at the future vision of the city. Like Commissioner Breckel said, this should be a more extended discussion. There won't be a lot of drastic changes made tonight or immediately with this. It is certainly something that will and should garner greater public involvement, a more extended discussion on these proposed changes. And I would like to just reassure the members of the public that we will hopefully do our best to try to bring more public voices back into the discussion as these restrictions ease and we can get back together for public meetings. So please, be patient, because it has been an incredible year with the restrictions in trying to get the public to come together to have meetings to talk about these things. So I do truly appreciate all the input that was given to tonight's meeting and to the comments or the comments that were received to address these informational dispatches that were sent out by Ben in the city. And we certainly, and I appreciate those comments that have been received. Will certainly help mold my feelings on these issues moving forward. But I feel that we do have some good direction already in place with the comprehensive plan and the housing needs analysis. So look forward to more public involvement in the future.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Okay, so looks like Julie.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Julie. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Thank you all for your involvement and opening this up to the public. I am definitely in favor of more public input. I would like to let Ben know that we do have some neighbors that have not received the information, and we can connect. I will give you their PO box. Flo and Cornell are new owners that are our neighbors here, and they have not received anything as of yet of these updates. So I'd like to loop them in. I feel like having more discussions like this is going to be amazing. I think that Tracy's comments and offerings are really appreciated. I feel like there's so much more that we can do as we communicate more. I think that there's a lot of creativity that's here in our community. I feel like there's opportunities that maybe are being missed. I'd like to see more connectivity of what some of these grants are for possibly individual projects, not necessarily big citywide projects. If there's a way that we can have more information available for development or owner specific questions for what can I do here? I would like to help the city expand in these areas, and I want to do these things. How can you help me? I just want to have more open communication. I would love to see more resources available. I would love to see more communication just in general in this whole discussion. I think from what I've been able to listen into, I apologize, I've been like driving from Portland and on my phone and then logged in again on my computer. So hopefully I was able to hear everything that you were all communicating along this, but it sounds like to me, what I get out of this is that there is a big openness for sitting down and learning more about what the community needs. It sounds like from a lot of different levels that there's more that we can do. There's a better way that we can communicate. I would love to see more open communication. I would love to see creativity in how we can develop the land that is available, be met by city openness and flexibility. I have many, many questions about what does this change in R2 and R1 and R3? I mean, there's so many questions still remaining to be answered. I'm super concerned of, you know, these lovely people that bought a lot from us that have 0.77 acres with a septic perk test available for them to be able to build. If this changes, are they going to be stopped? You know, there's so many questions still. And so I would really love to see more time, more outreach, more communication, and more creativity, because I think we all in some ways have some similar wants and needs. And if we can all work together, I feel like we can accomplish that. I've heard some really positive things in this meeting, and I have some hope where before, I'll be quite honest, I felt like there was a lot of restrictions and changes that felt oppressive or like there's so many questions. So anyway, the bottom line is we need to have our questions answered and have the opportunity and ability to be able to work through this stuff and feel like we've been included. I mean, we are the ones that will help make this vision happen. The landowners are the stakeholders. And so I just want to have more involvement. And I appreciate it. Sounds like you are open to that. I would very much recommend more meetings, more communication. I actually personally, when I look at the Skamania County Housing Needs Assessment, when they say county, it's the whole county. It includes us in the city. There are great recommendations here. There are great options. We need flexibility. It's laid out in front of us to a large degree already. So I guess the main thing that I want to say is, yes, let's keep talking. Let's have more transparency. Let's have more community involvement, community outreach, and whatever I can do to help with that would be great. You can ask Pat. I'm all about the maps. Maps. I'll help you with the maps.
We've heard that a couple times tonight, Julie. Thank you.
So thanks again. I mean, this is difficult, really tough stuff, but in the end, I'm just really hopeful. I really want to stay hopeful with this process. And I just keep on communicating, keep on involving us. I think that we will find something that's going to be pretty awesome if we can keep being open.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate the comments. Is there anyone else? I think that person with just the name, a hand went down. So
I apologize, I do have to leave.
Yes.
But I just want to say, I came here with the intention that I see an opportunity, not to finger wag. So I think I appreciated hearing everybody's responses. And so I just want to set a tone that I think our neighborhood is like all in terms of trying to find a way forward. So I'd like to put that out here, that I'm here in the spirit of seeing an opportunity and appreciating that there have been tremendous challenges this year. And so it's not about what did or didn't happen. It's about what I think some opportunity, now that I understand it a little better, where do I think there's some opportunity? So thanks for the extra
You're
time.
welcome.
I'll comment
You're
on
welcome.
that.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all your comments.
Can I do
So,
my speech again?
what's that?
I think, can I do my speech?
No, you're done. I haven't even had a chance to talk yet.
That's.
Is that from you?
Yeah, it's kind of what I said, but maybe a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So,
Do you have to get out of here too?
yeah.
Okay, thank you both for coming though.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. Ben, can I give this to you to add it into our public record, please?
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, I've got your email.
Okay, thank you again. So I haven't had a chance to say anything yet.
Make it quick.
I'm going to actually. Look, I have a very short bullet list. I'm pretty quick. When you raise 4 kids, you just, you go down the list quick. Let's go, let's move, get in the car. So then I think obviously we've heard quite a few things, which flexibility, doing some type of more outreach. I mean, typically we do an open house and like I said, we put maps on the wall. I'm gonna do that up maybe a little, how we could do something like that. I mean, obviously there's a lot of interest, which we like having a lot of interest as a planning commission. We really enjoy interacting with everyone and hearing opportunities and concerns. So I'm not sure how that would look with this situation going on with COVID.
Weather's getting better.
Well,
That's
So-
true. Meet the park, right?
I think
I
it's
guess,
pretty
uh,
short, I think, all we really want to know is that what do you plan? Why you want to do it? And what's the science that's backing it up?
Well, a lot of it, though, it's
That's not what's being said, though. That's what you want, but that's not what's being said by many people who are concerned about neighborhood character, concerned about change.
Oh, yeah, I mean.
They
that's-
don't
yeah.
want flexibility, they want additional controls. And so that this is what community discussions are, and I'm not hearing from anybody who's talking about the substance and not the process, that there's a consistent message coming. Like for so long from the community that showed up here, we had a consistent message of adding flexibility.
Mhm.
We've reached the end of that, and now we're getting this other message of don't change things, don't allow all this change, we don't want to become Hood River. And so now we're struggling to find that balance.
I heard both though tonight. I don't know that I agree with that characterization.
We did hear both. but
Okay,
that's
I'm
what
just saying,
like
but I
those-
felt like I heard more flexibility and not necessarily against change, but wanting to understand what that change would look like. It's not necessarily I'm entirely against change. That's not what I heard. I heard I might be for it, but I don't understand what that looks like. What is the design standard? How would that affect my neighborhood?
Sure.
Which it's
But
a
then
reasonable
I guess
question.
What I'm saying is the design standard that gets put into place is perceived as not being flexible
Okay,
when that all
okay,
works out.
I understand. Got it.
I think we do have to go back and say that Ben's right, okay, because, Ben's been trying hard to create this flexibility. And I think that that's really an admirable thing that Ben's been up to. So, we got to give credit when credit's due. And there's been a lot of work, and there's a lot of effort here, especially down that commercial zone. I thought that was brilliant. And I really appreciated having that parking finally taken a look at and finally being worked at. What we have is we just have some things that we have to be concerned about. You can't have areas where you don't have sewer and you make them do sewer. And we just have to address that. We have to figure that out. And then there's people who have concerns about, well, is that going to mean there's going to be this big apartment unit in there? And we just have to deal with the concerns, because every time you do change, there's a concern. And if once we answer those concerns and once we develop it and move it around, then it could be a great plan.
Yeah. Johanna, that was Rick May. Mr. Rice?
Oh, no, it's like what Mr. Zeller said, it's kind of and I don't mean the cart before the horse, but for example, if this plan came and you mentioned about the sewer, well, it's one thing if this goes to the city council for, let's say, up, down vote at some point, it doesn't answer that question. What, like, would the city extend the trunk to here or do this or that? And then, so it's not an arduous thing that it's impossible. Well, that question may need to be answered in advance of this plan being put together. So then that, because then that's a crucial piece of the plan that comes together. You see, who's going to pay for what, when, and where, instead of having the plan to where, okay, no development happens unless the city council someday says. But it just seemed when you were raising that issue about, well, would the city do this? It's like, well, that answer would need first. So it's hard to put the puzzle together. I get it, but you can't just say, okay, planning commission does it and city council does it. Maybe it's back and forth answering these difficult questions as we go. And one of the things we've always fought against is NIMBYism. So we're totally, and I told you that, is like change. let's just say we all love change. Well, we still need to have this discussion because what would the change look like? And sorry, I didn't mean to give.
No, it's fine. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't see any other hands up on the screen. So I just, again, we obviously need to continue, we'll table this and we'll continue this with some type of more public engagement going forward. Again, I'm just not sure how we can do that, right?
Yeah,
in a
and
good, effective
I
way.
think Ben has made an attempt, we've gotten some honest feedback on it, but he followed through in what we want to do. In fact, I guess you have to look at it as kind of being a success because we brought a lot of people out to say, I don't understand this, or I've got concerns about it.
Right.
And I think we are trying to find a way to, how do you engage the public when you can't bring them together in a group?
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure how we do this.
I'm sad that Tracy and Phil left too, because in that meeting, they touched on not only can we not bring them together in a group, when the city convenes a meeting, like your meeting now, people are concerned. They think it's a done deal and there's a distrust from the city. And they touched on that, and that's one of their offers to help with it. Again, though, if the letter's coming from me or from on city letterhead, does it feel like a decision is already made? And so I guess that's what I'm really hoping that you guys can give me clear direction on about what do you want done moving forward.
Right.
How we can help.
Because that's the perception versus the reality. And yeah.
Actually, one of it is why not just implement the goal for 2020 to have a staff person work with the neighbors up there, and that's a goal. Let's just do that. And then you got one subsection of neighborhood, and the city already, Leanna said it's not mandated. But just do that. We're already been in discussions. We already want to develop, and we're almost there. But the reason we feel that the city doesn't want to do that is because you have your own plan. And I could be wrong on that. But so in other words, we could have 100% unanimity over quite a big section of the city here that says this is how we all want development. And some of us were enemies in the beginning of that process. And then we can come to an agreement. And we're done. And we can involve schools, all the principals. So that's community involvement because and the city here was mandating that, and it hasn't happened. So that's what's frustrating, because we don't see it mandated for other areas, but we see here, talk to these people, come to some agreements, and we haven't had those discussions.
So Ben, I want to wrap this up. August, go ahead.
Real quick. So I think not just in the discussion of the zoning, but I think in other discussions that we've had over the years, kind of that recurring thing that I hear from the citizens is, why are we doing this? And there's, and sometimes even I feel that way when we're presented with something. It's like, where's this drive coming from? Is this city council down, or is this community up? I mean, how? And if I'm unsure about that, I'm sure that people that don't come to the meetings regularly are equally unsure and are, that conception of, is the city doing something, sneaky and trying to run something by, even though it may not be true, they don't have that information. And I think that's kind of uniformly, each time we deal with these issues of public involvement, revolves around that, how to, utilize that expectation that they have of being informed and not having to rehash everything every meeting because, oh, well, that happened 3 meetings ago. I didn't come to that one. And it's like, okay, we need to keep moving. We just can't stay in the same place having the same discussion. So
okay. So I got Davey, Mike, Jeff, August. So what do you need from us tonight? Are you looking for specific type of public involvement? What would you like comments from?
Even if the direction you give me is to present a draft public engagement strategy from here forward, that's direction, and I can do that for you. If you have more specific ideas about what to include in that draft, wonderful.
Yeah, I guess I would go back, Ben. Perhaps we can work with you just in terms of how that information is is presented. I think there was some confusion out there. I've gotten kind of used to the way this stuff rolls out, but you know, perhaps I'm an insider, you know, and I can appreciate, you know, being able to provide that information as succinctly and as clearly as we possibly can for folks.
What's missing for us is we don't know why.
Like the problem statement, the goals. Yeah, yep.
We don't know why, you know? And just, and those reports, they don't back up the need to do it. So why?
So is it my understanding, so Jeff, are you gonna keep working with Ben kind of as a liaison in this project? Are you comfortable
Sure.
doing that going forward? Okay, great, thank you, appreciate it.
If Ben's okay with
Yeah.
that.
Okay, no, thank
And
you,
I
thank
think
you very
part of
much.
that public involvement, you know, contact, like you said, most people don't even know what zoning they're currently in and what that means. You know, they may be living in R3 already, but they're in a single family house and they're going, I don't want something new going up. And it's like, no, they could already do that right now.
Mhm.
That's not something we're changing. So, you know, just having an idea of where we're at currently, and, you know, and sometimes it's easy to see on these charts.
Mhm.
But if you don't, I mean, most people are like, what's the difference between R1 and R2? You know, we're real familiar with that and can, you know, go into the nuances. But for most people, it's like, wait, is that one house or is that two houses?
Mhm.
You know, I don't understand. So I think kind of just getting real basic about what the zoning is and what the changes that we're talking about really mean to that specific area. And on the map, I think there's a lot of confusion with reading the map. You see the colors, but then you see the old designations still in there. And it's like, no, wait, is this brown and R2 or is it brown and R1? What does that mean? And it's just awkward for someone who doesn't understand that difference to grasp. And I think that's, you know, what I've heard. And I think that's probably an important aspect of kind of.
Yeah, okay, thanks, August. I think unless Mike or Davey have anything else to add, I think, Ben, do you feel like you and Jeff are comfortable going forward with? Okay. All right.
This is Mike. Valerie, I just think that the expansion and the extension and the availability of sewer is a crucial component in this. And perhaps the public would benefit from having some more clarity from the city council as to how and when and where the sewer will be expanded. It would also help inform the planning commission. So maybe their future discussions on the zoning changes can be delayed until after we get some more clarity on the expansion and planned expansion of the sewer system in the city.
Thank you, Mike. That's a great comment. Appreciate it. All right, I think we're going to, unless there's anything else, we're going to go ahead and close this section. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
We have a staff report if you'd like to stay, Rick. The parking intern's going to be here, looks like.
The parking.
I don't know, it's whatever I see. May Fellowship. Did you apply?
Yeah, I should.
So, you ready? Well, let me
Yeah, go ahead.
summarize.
Anything else?
Let me summarize. So Jeff and I will work together to get a draft engagement strategy moving from here forward. And then Jeff, you suggested, but I wasn't sure what the group thought about that as far as putting things in more layman's terms or to be able to understand. I wasn't sure if you were wanting to be that QA/QC on that or.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to do that. man.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then.
Good night. Thank you.
Mask, please.
What? Someone got their mask?
Mask, please.
Who's got their mask off? Was it Rick? I didn't even see him. Okay.
And then getting an update from the other city staff on the sewer plan as it is now. and where
Didn't we
that
already go
stands.
through a feasibility study? Haven't we done a bunch of that work?
Giving the update to you all.
No, I know. I just meant, I thought we've been doing this for a while. Right?
I'm just listening to Mike. I'm trying to summarize.
Oh,
what-
Mike, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He's,
Maybe maybe we have, but I just don't know how it got tied into this proposed zoning changes as to where.
No,
and how
no,
this
I'm
work
sorry,
is.
Mike. I was going back to what Rick May had said. He had brought up the county plan and the whole feasibility, and I'm just saying, I felt like as a city,
Yeah.
we've already been working through that.
Right.
Or, okay, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
I wasn't on a different planet. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to move forward to the parking intern.
Yeah, so just one update, the International City County Manager Association works with the UW School of Public Policy to bring their master's degree students out into rural areas to get some experience. So this is the same program that brought Kim Pearson to us in 2018.
2018, I think.
For broadband.
That was great.
We
Did a good job.
submitted another proposal for parking intern for this year, and so we'll get UW, hopefully get a UW master's student. Our job description is posted on the UW site right now, so as long as people apply to that and we feel like we'll be served by one of them, then we'll have an intern come. Their primary task is going to be parking, and so they will look at, they'll conduct a gap analysis of existing on-street parking where additional supply could be done on street. They'll help to fill the gap that I've created in the effort that Mike's working on for off-street private parking, and they'll create that inventory. And then they will organize an effort to monitor usage of that inventory so that we know whether we exceed what has been called a magic ratio of 85% usage on too much. So they'll help us understand that. And that's exciting. That's
Great.
the big update.
Wonderful. That's great.
So they're
Good for us and great for
legislation
the student getting some real job, life experience. So
yeah.
Great. All right. Unless there's anything else. Ben, are we?
If you all had any reports or updates, and then there is a thought of the month that was provided by the community that was an opinion piece tying zoning to overt racism and the community of Berkeley, California's efforts to undo some of that.
Thank you. That's the link I didn't. Okay. I didn't see that part of the agenda. All right. Unless there is anything else, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn. Everybody gets 25 minutes back. Thank you, Ben.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
Good to see
night.
those of you in person that we saw.
Thanks for the work on keeping the meeting remote at this point. Thanks, appreciate it.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah, definitely. I'm getting vaccinated on Wednesday, so I should see you in person next time.
Okay.